Alina Mendoza carefully addressed the last wedding invitation, her fingers tracing the embossed letters of her parents' names. After 6 years with Thomas, a kindergarten teacher with a poet's heart, they were finally getting married in the small chapel where they'd first met at a community fundraiser. "Done," she announced, smiling at Thomas as he arranged photo frames on their apartment wall. "Mom and Dad, my sisters Josephine and Paulina, and of course Naomi, my best friend since we were 7. Thomas kissed her forehead.
Ow.
"They'll be thrilled. Your dad's been hinting about walking you down the aisle for years." But 3 days later, Alina stared at her phone in disbelief, her mother's voice echoing through the speaker. "Darling, there's been a terrible coincidence. Your cousin Wesley is getting married the same weekend at the Bellevue Resort. You know, the real estate developer who just made the Forbes list? He's flying everyone to his private island." Alina's stomach tightened. "But Mom, you knew our date for months. ... "No, sweetheart, but this is Wesley. The governor will be there, possibly even a senator. Your father thinks it could open doors for his business. Josephine and Paulina are already shopping for gowns. So you're all choosing Wesley's wedding over mine?" Elena's voice cracked. "Elena, be reasonable. You're marrying a teacher. Wesley has connections that could help our entire family." Evening, Alina called Naomi, certain her best friend would understand. They'd promised to be each other's maids of honor since childhood. "I'm so sorry, Alina." Naomi sounded genuinely conflicted. "But Wesley's fiancé hired me to photograph their wedding. It's triple my usual rate, plus exposure to high-profile clients. I can't turn it down as a struggling photographer." After hanging up, Alina sat on her balcony, watching the sunset blur through her tears. Thomas found her there, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. "They're not coming," she whispered. "Any of them. My parents, my sisters, even Naomi. They're all going to Wesley's wedding instead." Thomas sat beside her, his presence steady. "What can I do?" Alina wiped her eyes. "Just promise you'll be there." He took her hand, his eyes never leaving hers. "Where else would I possibly be?" Alina stood frozen in the chapel's small antechamber, peeking through the cracked door at the half-empty rows of seats. The right side, reserved for her family, contained nothing but polished wood and sunlight falling through stained glass. No mother dabbing proud tears, no father nervously adjusting his tie, no sisters whispering excitedly, no childhood best friend beaming with approval, Mrs. Rodriguez. Their elderly neighbor, who'd offered to help with preparations, touched Elena's arm gently. "Are you all right, dear?" Alina smoothed her simple ivory dress purchased on sale rather than the designer gown her mother had pushed for. "I don't know if I can walk out there alone." "I could walk with you," Mrs. Rodriguez offered, her kind eyes crinkling. "If you'd like." Alina nodded gratefully, but before they could move, the door opened fully. Thomas stood there, handsome in his navy suit, breaking tradition to see her before the ceremony. "Thomas, you're not supposed to. Rules don't matter today," he said quietly. "I felt that you needed me." Elena's composure cracked. "Everyone chose Wesley. Everyone who was supposed to love me most." Thomas took her hands, his voice steady. "I need to tell you something important. When I was 12, my baseball coach told me I'd never make the team because I was too small. So I practiced alone every day until I became the best player he'd ever seen." "What does that have to do with everything?" "Because that's when I learned that sometimes people don't see your worth until you've already decided it doesn't matter what they think." He brushed away a tear from her cheek. "The people who truly matter are here, the ones who aren't. Their loss, not ours." Alina looked past him into the chapel. Thomas's parents sat in the front row, alongside his brother and sister. His college roommates, colleagues from school, even students who'd begged to attend, were scattered throughout. Not a massive crowd, but faces that radiated genuine joy. "Do you still want to marry me today?" Thomas asked. "Just us and these people who chose to be here?" Alina took a deep breath, the ache in her chest beginning to soften. "Yes, more than ever." "Then take my arm," he said, offering it to her. "We'll walk in together, not because you need me, but because I want the world to see that we're already a team." As they stepped into the aisle, Alina felt something unexpected replace her sorrow. Defiance. The empty spaces no longer seemed to mock her. but rather to make room for something new and entirely their own. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the chaplain announced, his voice warm in the sunlit chapel. "You may kiss the bride." Thomas leaned in. Alina closed her eyes, letting go of the hollow ache where her family should have been. His lips met hers with such tenderness that something inside her shifted, a realization that some loves are strong enough to fill every empty space. When they turned to face their small gathering, the applause felt thunderous despite coming from fewer than 30 people. Mrs. Rodriguez threw rose petals with the enthusiasm of a woman half her age. Thomas's students jumped up and down in their small suits and dresses, their parents smiling indulgently. The reception was held in the chapel's garden, decorated with string lights and wildflowers gathered by Thomas's sister Olivia. No crystal chandeliers or imported orchids like Wesley's wedding surely had, but the golden afternoon light created a glow no expensive lighting designer could replicate. "May I have this dance?" Thomas's father, Jerome, approached, offering his arm. "Since your dad missed his chance, I'd be honored to stand in." Lena blinked back tears as the older man led her in a simple waltz. "Thank you, Jerome." "No need for thanks," he said kindly.
Hi.
"Today you became our daughter too." Throughout the evening, Alina noticed something surprising. Without the pressure of impressing her status-conscious family, she felt lighter, more present. She kicked off her shoes to dance with Thomas's nieces. She laughed until her sides ached at his brother's toast filled with embarrassing stories. She sat with Mrs. Rodriguez and heard tales of the woman's 60-year marriage. When the cake, homemade by Thomas's mother, was cut, Alina felt herself truly smiling for the first time that day. "You know what?" she whispered to Thomas as they swayed to a slow song under the stars. "I think this is better than the wedding I imagined." "How so?" he asked, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "It's honest. Everyone here actually wants to be here. No one came for connections or obligation or because we look good in their social media posts." She rested her head against his shoulder. "I keep thinking about what you said earlier about people not seeing your worth, and I think I've spent my whole life trying to be worthy of my family's approval. But today I realized something." She looked up at him, her eyes clear and certain. "I don't need to earn love. Real love shows up, even when there's nothing to gain." As the evening wound down, Alina found herself surrounded by Thomas's family, all insisting the newlyweds take their planned honeymoon, despite Elena's earlier impulse to cancel it. "We already have a group chat to coordinate airport pickup," Olivia announced, showing Alina her phone. "And Mom's stocked your freezer with meals for when you return." Looking around at these people who had stepped in without hesitation, Alina realized family wasn't just about shared DNA. It was about who chose to share your joy, even when there was nothing in it for them. 3 days into their honeymoon at a modest beachside cottage, Elena's phone pinged with a news notification. She'd been avoiding social media, knowing it would be flooded with images from Wesley's extravagant celebration. But the headline made her sit up in her beach chair. "Tech millionaire's wedding ends in scandal." Arrests made after fight erupts between groom and investor. Thomas lowered his book. "Everything okay?" Alina wordlessly handed him the phone. Article detailed how Wesley's wedding had dissolved into chaos when a business rival revealed evidence of fraudulent investment practices during the reception. Wesley had apparently been falsifying company data to attract investors, including money from Alina's father, who had remortgaged their family home to invest in what he believed was a sure thing. Further down, a grainy photo showed her parents and sisters being escorted from the venue as security cleared the premises. Naomi was mentioned as the wedding photographer who had inadvertently captured evidence on camera that was now being examined by authorities. "Oh, Alina," Thomas murmured. "I'm so sorry about your father's investment." But Alina was reading it different. Paragraph 1, describing how Wesley had thrown his new bride under the bus, claiming she was responsible for the accounting discrepancies. The woman he'd married primarily for her family's banking connections was now facing potential charges herself. They chose this, Alina said slowly. They picked fool's gold over real happiness. Her phone rang. "Josephine." After a moment's hesitation, Alina answered. "Lena, it was horrible," her sister sobbed. "We were all escorted out like criminals. Mom hasn't stopped crying, and Dad, he might lose everything." Naomi's been questioned by investigators because of her photos. Are you all okay? Alina asked, surprised by her own calm. No. Wesley used us all. He seated us prominently so his investors would think he had family support. He knew this might happen. Josephine paused. How was your wedding? Alina looked at Thomas, who was giving her privacy while pretending to read.
At the simple gold
Band on her finger that represented a promise she knew would be kept. It was perfect, she said truthfully. Small, but real. After hanging up, Alina stared at the horizon where the ocean met the sky. The people who had abandoned her were now facing consequences of their choices, not because she wished it upon them, but because they had built their hopes on foundations that couldn't support the weight of reality. We should call my parents, Thomas said. See if they can help your family with legal advice. Lena turned to him, this man who thought of helping the very people who had hurt her. And in that moment, she knew with absolute certainty that she had married the truly wealthy man. 6 months after the wedding, Lena stirred a pot of soup in the kitchen of their small house, a wedding gift from Thomas's parents who had helped. With the down payment, the autumn light filtered through curtains Olivia had sewn, casting a warm glow over the dining table set for 7. The doorbell rang. Thomas squeezed her shoulder before going to answer. Alina heard the hesitant voices of her parents in the entryway, followed by her sisters. The last voice belonged to Naomi, who had called weekly since the disaster at Wesley's wedding.
I'm rebuilding their friendship.
One difficult conversation at a time. Alina wiped her hands on a towel and stepped into the living room. Her mother looked older, the stress of the past months etched in new lines around her eyes. Her father had lost weight. Josephine and Paulina stood awkwardly clutching wine bottles, while Naomi held a photo album. Thank you for inviting us, her mother said softly. We don't deserve it. No, Alina agreed. You don't. But that's what makes it an invitation and not a transaction. The meal began stiffly, but as Thomas shared funny stories from his classroom, the atmosphere gradually warmed. Alina watched her family, the one she was born into, and the one she had married into, slowly beginning to blend. I brought something, Naomi said, during dessert, sliding the album toward Alina. It may have been at the wrong wedding, but I sent my assistant to yours. Alina opened it to find professional photos of her wedding moments she hadn't known were captured. Thomas wiping away a tear as she walked toward him. Mrs. Rodriguez throwing petals with abandon, the two of them dancing under the stars. My way of saying I'm sorry, Naomi whispered. Thank you for this second chance. Later, as everyone moved to the living room for coffee, Elena's father pulled her aside. I was wrong, he said simply. I chased what I thought would make us secure and nearly lost everything that actually does. He glanced at Thomas, who was showing Paulina how to play chess. You chose wisely. I did, Elena agreed. But Dad, so can you. Started now. As the evening ended, Alina stood in the doorway watching her birth family walk to their cars, carrying leftover containers and promises to return soon. Thomas slipped his arm around her waist. Are you okay? He asked. Alina nodded. I think I finally understand something. There's choosing people because of what they can give you, and there's choosing people because of who they help you become. Turned to face the home they were building together, modest in size, but immeasurable in meaning. They left empty seats at our wedding, she said, but look at the table we've managed to fill. Thomas kissed her temple. And there's always room for more. Lena smiled, touching the slight curve of her stomach that only she knew about so far there. Newest family member, already teaching her that hearts, unlike chairs, never run out of space.